I found out my brother had been texting my fiancée for 4 months. When I picked up her phone by accident on a Tuesday night in February, my parents told me she must have started it. I left the city I grew up in, drove 3,400 kilometers west, built a life nobody could take from me. And 4 years later my mother called crying from a house she was about to lose, asking me to come home and fix what my brother had broken. My name is Craig. I was 31. My fiancée was Bridget. We had been together 3 years and 8 months. Engaged for the last 8 of those months. She had a ring I paid $8,400 for. We had a venue booked at a golf club outside Hamilton for the following September. We had a honeymoon deposit, $3,800 non-refundable, sitting on a trip to Portugal. Everything was done. Invitations ordered. Menu selected. I had already picked out the suit. My brother Trent is 3 years younger than me. He has always been the one people described as charming. He has also always been the one who could not hold a job past the 1-year mark, could not pay rent without a phone call to my parents, and could not finish anything he started. He had worked construction, tried sales, spent 4 months going into business for himself, selling supplements out of his apartment. My parents described all of this as him finding his way. I described it as borrowing time from people who could not afford to give it. Trent was supposed to be one of my groomsmen. On that Tuesday in February I came home from a job site. I was a journeyman electrician, working for a contractor out of Hamilton. And Bridget was in the shower. Her phone was on the kitchen counter. I picked it up because I was going to check what time the restaurant closed. We had dinner plans for Thursday. And I wanted to confirm the reservation. I opened it because she had asked me to look things up for her before. The thread at the top of her messages was not a restaurant, it was my brother. The most recent message was from that afternoon. He had sent a photo. She had replied with a heart. The thread went back. I scrolled 4 months. I scrolled to the beginning. There were 214 messages, plans, affection. Twice they had met on a Sunday when I was working overtime. I stood in that kitchen for a long time. Long enough that the restaurant reservation stopped mattering entirely. When Bridget came out of the shower I had her phone on the table. And I was sitting with my hands flat on my knees. She said my name the way people say it when they already know what you know. I said, "How long?" She said, "Craig, please let me explain." I said, "The messages go back to October. It's February, so I know how long. I want to know why." She cried. She said it had started as a friendship. She said it became something else before she realized what was happening. She said she was going to end it before the wedding. She said she still wanted to marry me. I said, "Did you sleep with him?" She looked at me. And then she looked at the floor. I called my brother. He picked up on the third ring. He said, "Hey man, what's up?" Like it was any Tuesday. I told him I had seen the messages. He was quiet for 4 seconds. Then he said, "She came to me. I didn't go looking for it. You need to understand that." I hung up. I called my parents. My mother answered. I said, "I need you to know something." I told her what I had found. She was quiet for a long time, then she said, "Are you sure you are reading it right?" Trent wouldn't pursue her. Bridget must have made the first move. You know how he is, he doesn't say no to things. He doesn't always think. My father got on and said, "Don't make a rash decision. You can work through this. Bridget loves you. Trent made a mistake, but he is your brother. Families go through worse. Families go through worse." I had put a deposit on a wedding. I had bought a ring. I had a honeymoon package I was not getting back. I had a brother in my fiancée's messages for 4 months. And my father was telling me families go through worse. I gave Bridget back the ring that night. I left the apartment. I stayed at a motel off the QEW for 2 nights. The venue deposit dispute took 3 weeks. And I lost $2,600 of the $4,200. The Portugal trip was gone entirely. I did not fight it. I was too busy being somewhere else in my head to care about the money in the short term. I called my friend Murray on the 3rd morning. Murray and I had worked together for 6 years. He was a fellow journeyman and the kind of man who shows up with a truck and does not ask you to explain yourself. When I told him what happened, his first question was not "What did you do?" or "Are you sure?" or "How do you feel?" He said, "What do you need?" That is the only question that matters when someone's world has cracked open. Not advice, not perspective. What do you need? I said, "I need to leave." He said, "For how long?" I said, "I don't know yet." He said, "Where?" I said, "West. Calgary probably. I hear the electrical work is everywhere out there." He said, "It is. My cousin is out there. You want the number?" I took the number. My tools fit in the bed of my truck, my clothes, my laptop, my grandfather's compass from the top drawer of my dresser, and a binder of documents. That everything. I left the furniture. I was on the lease. I called the landlord, explained, forfeited my last month, lost another $1,900. I didn't care. I needed the city behind me. I called my employer. My foreman said take a leave. I said it wasn't a leave situation. He said he would put me in the books as a voluntary departure and leave a reference on file. I shook his hand over the phone. I drove out of Hamilton at 6 in the morning on a Thursday. Took the 401 west. When the skyline disappeared in my mirror, I turned on the radio and drove. It takes about 3.5 days to drive to Calgary from Hamilton if you push it. I pushed it. I stopped to sleep twice. Somewhere in Manitoba, I pulled up at a gas station at 2 in the morning. It was -23. The sky was the kind of dark you never see in southern Ontario because there aren't enough lights to ruin it. I stood outside for a few minutes and I thought about nothing. Not Bridget, not my brother, not Portugal. Just cold air and a flat horizon that did not know my name or care about my problems. That was the first moment. Since February I had felt like I could breathe. I arrived in Calgary on a Sunday. Murray's cousin met me at a coffee shop on Macleod Trail, and we talked for 2 hours. He had contacts. He made calls. By Tuesday I had an interview with an electrical contractor out of the southeast end of the city. By Thursday I was hired, $46 an hour. Less than I had been making in Hamilton. I didn't negotiate. I needed the start. I rented a basement suite in the southeast, $875 a month. Shared laundry, small windows, a landlord who asked no questions beyond the deposit. It was fine. It was day one. My mother found my new number 6 weeks after I left. I had given it to 4 people. Murray, my new employer, the landlord, and my father's cardiologist's office for an appointment reminder. One of those 4 gave it to her, or she called enough people until someone slipped. She called at 8 on a Wednesday evening. She said, "Craig, thank God. We have been looking." I said, "I know. That is why I made it difficult." She said, "You cannot just leave, you have a family." I said, "My family told me the woman who cheated on me with my brother probably made the first move, so my brother couldn't help himself. And my father told me to work through it. That family made a choice. I made one too." She said, "Trent is devastated. He knows he was wrong, he's been trying to reach you." I said he knows where to send a letter. She said, "He and Bridget, they are spending time together. We want you to know we haven't." I said, "Stop." She stopped. I said, "I don't want the update. If you're calling to tell me what they are doing together, I'm going to hang up. If you're calling to check that I'm alive, I'm alive. I'm in Calgary, I'm working. That's all you get." She said, "Please don't shut us out." I said, "You shut me out first, you just didn't call it that." I changed the number the next morning. 3 people on the new one. Murray, my employer, the landlord. Murray texted the old number still, so I had to give him the new one with a note. "Give this to nobody, including my mother." He texted back, "Understood." Murray was my eyes back east. He texted when there was something I needed to know. Not because I asked, but because he understood. That the truth is something a real friend delivers whether you want it or not. He did not editorialize. He did not tell me how to feel. He just reported what was happening, the way a good electrician reads a panel. No drama, no guessing, just what the current is doing. Month 2, he texted, "Trent and Bridget are official. Your parents had them for dinner Sunday." Month 5. "Trent borrowed $18,000 from your parents. Told them it was for a partnership with someone he met. $18,000. I set my phone down and went back to work. Month 8. Your parents took out a HELOC against the house. $85,000. Trent has a food truck idea. Your dad co-signed." I was standing in a parking lot in Calgary when I read that. An $85,000 home equity line of credit on a house they had owned for 26 years. For a food truck. For a man who had never run any operation longer than 4 months. And whose most recent venture had been selling supplements to people who never asked him why he wasn't taking them himself. I went back inside and finished my shift. Month 11, the truck launched. Trent is posting about it online. Your mom is sharing his posts. Month 14, the truck stopped operating. Health unit inspection. Supplier invoices unpaid. Murray sent me the number. $31,000 in outstanding vendor debt. $85,000 HELOC. $18,000 borrowed earlier. My parents were carrying $134,000 of consequence. For a food truck that lasted 14 months. Month 18. Bridget left Trent. Murray wrote only. She told someone she said she didn't realize who he actually was until she had to live with him. I did not respond to that message for a day. Not because it was satisfying. Because it wasn't. Not the way I thought it would be. The satisfaction people imagine you'd feel when the person who hurt you gets hurt back, it's not satisfaction. It's just distance. You realize you are far enough away that it doesn't reach you the same way anymore. Month 20. Trent moved back into the house. Murray, he's in your old room. Contributing nothing as far as anyone can tell. While all of that was happening, I was building something. At the 14-month mark in Calgary, I passed my master electrician exam. In Alberta, that ticket opens everything. You can pull permits, you can run a company, you can be the responsible party on a project. I studied for 8 months, I wrote the exams on a Saturday, I got my result 2 weeks later. I went to Tim Hortons alone, ordered a large coffee, sat in a window seat, and read the letter, pass. I did not call anyone. I just sat with it for a while. I registered Northland Electrical Services Limited. 2 months later. I used savings from 18 months of steady work. I had $31,000 set aside. The startup costs for an electrical contracting company are lower than people assume when you are the labor. You need insurance, tools, a truck you already own, and the license on the wall. I had all of those. I got my first commercial contract through Murray's cousin's referral. A landlord with 3 rental properties needing panel upgrades. Who did not want to wait 6 weeks for a larger company to schedule him. I did the work in a week, he paid on time. He referred me to 2 other landlords. By the end of year 2 I had 2 employees and billed $420,000. Year 3 4 employees, $680,000 in revenue. Year 4 7 employees, just over $1 million. My father's RRSP. Murray told me about that in year 3. He texted, your dad cashed his RRSP to cover some of the vendor debt. $28,000 gone. Withholding tax took another chunk on top of that. He's 65 and he cashed retirement savings for a food truck debt that wasn't his. I put my phone face down on the desk and looked out the window of my office for a long time. The office was a small space in an industrial unit in the Northeast. It had a whiteboard and a coffee maker and a view onto a parking lot. It was not impressive, but the company name was on the door, the insurance was current, and none of it had been co-signed by anyone. My father cashed $28,000 in retirement savings at 65 to cover a debt created by a man who was sleeping in that same house and contributing nothing. I was not consulted. I was not even told until Murray found out through someone who knew someone. I was sitting in a city 3,400 kilometers away, running a company I had built from a rest stop and a phone number, and my father was cashing his RRSP for a food truck that had already been closed for over a year. In year 3 I also met Colette. She was at a construction safety seminar the city ran for contractors. She was a structural engineer with a civil consulting firm. She sat 2 rows ahead of me and asked better questions than anyone else in the room. I introduced myself afterward, because I could not think of a reason not to. We got coffee. She said, tell me something true about yourself. I told her, I had moved here from Hamilton 4 years ago because of a betrayal I did not particularly want to describe in a parking lot. She said, fair enough. Tell me something true that doesn't involve other people. I said I had built a company from a parking lot and a cold coffee introduction, and I still was not sure I believed it was real. She said, that's a good kind of not sure. We went for dinner the following week. We have been together 11 months now. Year 4, Murray's longest text to date. He wrote, your parents got a power of sale notice. Between the HELOC and the original mortgage they are running about $3,800 a month in payments. Your mom's income from the school board is around $2,200. Your dad isn't working anymore. Health stuff. Trent pays nothing toward the house. Works at a warehouse part-time. Keeps most of it. Your parents have been telling people it's a temporary cash flow situation. But the bank is not treating it that way. I read that sitting in my truck at 7 in the morning before a job. 3 days later my mother called. She had gotten my number from somewhere. I found out later she had called my old employer in Hamilton and he had slipped, thinking enough time had passed. She called on a Tuesday. I answered because I was curious what 4 years of consequences sounded like over a phone line. She said, Craig, please don't hang up. I said, talk. She said, we are in trouble. The house is going into power of sale. We cannot cover the payments. Your father cashed his RRSP 2 years ago and there is nothing left. Trent is here but he cannot. He does not have the income to cover it. We need help. We need you to come home. I said, I know about the power of sale. I know about the RRSP. I know about the food truck debt and the HELOC, and my brother in my old room paying nothing toward any of it. I have known since it happened. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, how? I said, Murray, he told me everything, every time. She said, why didn't you call? I said, what would I have said? You told me 4 years ago that the woman who cheated on me must have started it, because Trent doesn't say no to things. And then you put $85,000 on the house, for that same man's food truck. There was nothing I could have said into that situation that would have changed anything you had already decided. Who you were backing. She was quiet again. Then, we made terrible mistakes. We know that now. But you were always the one who sorted things. You always knew what to do. We need you to come home. I said. When I needed someone to sort things out 4 years ago. When I was in a motel off the QEW trying to figure out what to do with a ring I had spent $8,400 on. Nobody sorted anything out for me. My mother told me Bridget probably made the first move. My father told me to work through it, and I drove 3,400 kilometers and sorted it out myself. She said, I know that. I am telling you we were wrong. I am asking you to forgive it. I said, I am not angry anymore. I want to be clear about that. The anger ran out somewhere west of Winnipeg in the middle of a February night. What I have now is not anger. It is just the understanding that certain choices do not get undone. You co-signed for a food truck. You told me the woman cheating on me was probably not my brother's fault. Those choices produced outcomes. I am one of the outcomes. The power of sale notice is another. She said, your father is 65. He has nothing left. He is not well. We are going to lose the house we have had for 26 years. Are you really going to let that happen? I sat with that for longer than she expected. The line stayed open. I said, Mom, 4 years ago I left Hamilton with the tools in my truck, my grandfather's compass on the dashboard, and $3,100 in my account after I settled the deposits I lost. I drove through northern Ontario in February. I slept in my truck twice. I got to Calgary and rented a basement suite, with small windows and shared laundry, and I started over at the bottom of someone else's company at $46 an hour. Nobody called to check on me. Nobody offered to co-sign anything. Nobody put a house on the line for my first year. I built this without any of that. And I am not saying that to rub it in. I am saying it because you have to understand what you are actually asking. The thing you want me to come home and fix was built piece by piece from decisions I had no part in. The HELOC was not my idea. The food truck was not my suggestion. My brother in that house, paying nothing for 2 years, is not a problem I created. She said, he is your brother. I said, he was my groomsman. He spent 4 months texting my fiancée and meeting her on the Sundays I worked overtime. He is someone who shares a last name with me. Right now that is the extent of it. She said, what are we supposed to do? I said, list the house before the bank takes it. Take whatever you clear and find something the two of you can actually afford. Tell Trent to get his own place and pick up a second job. That is what you do. That is what I did when I had less than you have now. She said, will you come back at all, ever? Long pause. I said, I don't know. I'm not saying never. I'm saying not now, and not for this, and not to fix something I did not break. My father called from a number I didn't recognize 2 days later. He said, son, I want to say something and I need you to hear it. He said, I got it wrong, not just 4 years ago. For a long time before that, I got it wrong. I made excuses for Trent that I never had to make for you because you never gave me reason to. And when you needed me to stand beside you, I told you to work through it. I know what that cost you. I'm sorry. My father apologizing. I had never heard that in 35 years, not once. I said, I believe you. He said, is that enough? I said, it's true, I don't know yet if it's enough. He said, fair. We stayed on the line for another minute. Without saying anything. He said, the house cleared at the power of sale, about $12,000 after the payoffs. I said, I know. He said, 26 years. I said, I know, Dad. He said, will we hear from you? I said, you'll hear from me. I don't know if that was a promise or a direction. I said it because it was the truest thing I could offer. And I did not want to offer less. That night Colette and I sat on the balcony of the apartment we share in Beltline. Calgary in the evening is something. The mountains hold those last light longer than you would expect. She did not ask what was wrong. She brought 2 cups of tea out, sat down, and let the quiet be what it was. After a while she said, you okay? I said, my dad apologized. First time. She said, that's a big thing. I said, yeah. She said, you don't have to figure out tonight what it means. I said, I know. She put her hand on my arm and we watched the mountains until it got dark. My parents are renting a 2-bedroom apartment in Stony Creek now. $12,000 from the sale after the mortgage and the HELOC were cleared. 26 years of equity gone to a food truck, and a man who could not run one. My mother still works at the school board. My father's health is being managed. Trent has his own studio now, finally, and works 2 jobs. Murray says it is not enough, but it is something. Bridget is back in Hamilton. I heard this third hand and did not go looking for more. I don't carry anger about any of it. Anger takes energy, and I have used all of mine on better things. My grandfather's compass is on my bed at the office. It has been there since I got the space. I did not keep it for sentiment. I kept it because on the worst night of that February drive, somewhere in Manitoba, ice on the highway, nothing visible in any direction. I looked at it on the dashboard and it was pointing west. That was the only information I needed. Pick a direction, drive until the old city cannot follow you. Build something on the other side that belongs only to you. Some compasses don't point home. Some of them point forward. And the best thing you can learn, the thing nobody teaches you and experience burns into you slowly, is how to tell the difference. I learned.